Hello, welcome to the Burda Festival podcast powered by afikra. My name is Mikey, and our special guest today is Rashed Al Nuaimi. Rashed is an actor, performer, singer, and songwriter. We talk about his approach to performance, songwriting, and how he approached the performance at the Burda Festival in December. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Please go to burda.ae to learn more about the festival and to see some of the performances. Welcome. We are very honored to have our next guest for the Burda Podcast. My name is Mikey. Our guest is an Emirati actor, singer, and songwriter who is most well known for his performances on social media, whether he likes that or not. That is how he reaches most people around the world. A budding performer who's making waves on stage in the US, but has an avid following across the Middle East. Welcome, Rashed Al Nuaimi.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. So, right before the call, we were talking and you discovered that I'm also a musician. And I grew up in a really musical family. My parents, my mother is a musician and school teacher, music teacher. My grandmother was a music teacher as well. Most people in my family play music. And I'm curious what kind of household you grew up in musically.
Trying to find that point of view has always been tricky for me, because it was always navigating so many different social structures, religious structures, cultural structures. And in that, I mean, the family played music, but it wasn't necessarily encouraged as a form, even as a hobby. My brother is one of the most talented people that I've ever met when it comes to music. You literally can give him any instrument, and within less than 5 minutes, he can play it as if he's been playing it for years and years. And I can tell that's a very natural ability that is within him. My mother has a beautiful voice, and I think she's like entering her 60th year. And I'm now slowly trying to get her to open up her voice and to allow herself to sing with full volume. Because as a family, we've always had that appreciation to music. We loved it. I think I remember hearing my mom always kind of going to the nuances of how a performer and singer would sing a specific note when it comes to a song. And I picked that, I guess, as I was growing up, but it was always just as a kind of like a conversation. It's a side. It's weird because I'm trying to label it as it was a household of music, or it was a household not very much with music, but it was a bit of both. It was one that appreciated it, but didn't have the full ability to kind of fully explore it.
What is your first sort of musical memory? Maybe that sort of gets a little at what I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand what palette you grew up with, because when I hear your songs, when I hear your covers, I hear specific influences, but I'm curious how far back those influences go. I mean, I can sort of, I don't have to bury the lead. I hear a lot of Frank Sinatra, and I hear a lot of sort of jazz covers, sort of early pop jazz covers, and that sort of stuff. And I'm curious if those were early memories, or if that's something that you discovered as a high schooler and realized, oh, I think I'm into this.
You know what's so interesting is that I have labeled myself as a singer for the past 25 years. I was singer first, until I applied for my musical theater MFA degree. Mm-hmm. And I was introduced to acting as a curriculum. It wasn't just acting as a hobby, but it was a form of study. So I got to study acting. In that moment, it was very conflicting for me, because it was a moment where I had to kind of admit to myself that I'm kind of more resonant with acting than I am with singing in a strange way. And now I kind of want to call myself an actor first before a singer.
Well, on your Instagram, you do. So I wanted to get to that. Yeah.
So what I have recently discovered is that I have I have the ability, and I have the interest and the curiosity into kind of like the realm of mimicking in the world of acting. And I actually I wasn't like an avid listener of jazz music or Frank Sinatra and all of that, but I think naturally I was able to pick up on what makes Frank Sinatra sound the way he does. And I think I would attribute that to my acting skills. that came through into singing form. So I would, and this is why I think I've been able to find a good audience, is because I can kind of find what makes Frank Sinatra, jazz music, pop, kind of R&B and soul. Now, which at Burda Festival has been a wonderful kind of connection to that, is now I'm tampering into Eastern style and maqamat and all that, which I didn't study
Explore,
explore or listen to. So it's interesting how my acting side of things is hugely influencing my music. I never really saw those worlds come together before, but they're...
Well, I mean, that makes sense to me. So if somebody sort of Googles you and reads up about you, there's phrases like opera singer, right? Is that a misnomer? Or did you describe yourself as an opera singer as in high school and stuff like that?
Yeah. So education is very important, because when you are educated about the subject, then you can decide if you should be labeled whatever that entails. So I actually did not label myself that. These were like
media outlets,
articles and outlets who were just like, oh, he can sing one Italian song, and then we will call him an opera singer.
Yeah, he sings with a vibrato.
Sings for basically, yes.
Yeah.
Basically. And like, it was very misleading, because I had to suddenly become this opera singer. And then I was like, okay, what makes an opera singer? And then I started getting this froggy voice and like trying to take it down. That's how I heard Tom and Jerry singing. And that's where my acting skills came in. Luckily, it worked to my benefit, because it kind of gave me the push and the unique space where people were like, oh, we don't really have Emirati opera singers, so let's push them forward. Now I definitely do not label myself as an opera singer. I think education-wise, having studied actually classical music, it's a whole different form of study, and it's a skill, and it's a whole realm of its own, and I can't just take the label on.
No, that makes sense. And it's amazing how media outlets can, just have a label stick to you, even if it's not something that is insulting. It's a compliment, but it's just, this is not right.
And I guess I was a teenager back then, so I didn't really think much of it. And I was like, oh, you know what? I guess I am an opera singer, so let's go. Yeah. It's so funny, because that those news articles kind of made me apply for master's degrees in opera studies first, knowing in the inner part of me, it's not what I wanted to do, but because that's what the people want, that's what the people see, that's what the people hear, and that's what they've attributed to me. Therefore, I should apply to opera studies. Luckily, I got rejected, which I'm so happy that I got rejected. And it put things in perspective as to like, okay, now moving forward in the Arab region, it's like, okay, how can we be better informed about what the actual art is? I hate to just call anyone an opera singer, not really knowing the full depth of what that means.
It's funny that you're like latching on to this idea of being an actor and being a performer, because even some of your earlier videos, like videos that came out in 2015 and stuff like that, are so performative, right? There's like a vaudevillian character to them almost, where you're playing two characters, overdubbing, and this idea, one's sort of a caricature of somebody, one's a caricature of another. You're clearly you like the idea of like kind of hamming it up. You like the idea of acting on stage. You're clearly interested in the camera, right?
So you say it clearly, and it's so clear to me now, but it was not at all at any certain point. It actually was weirdly not clear to me until I even finished my master's degree. And it's very weird, because I guess the only thing I was going up against is conditioning. So I just conditioned myself to think of myself as a singer, even though I would say 80% of what makes my videos on social media like get the traction.
Is the performance.
With the performance of it, which is mind-boggling to me. It's like, how did I miss that? How did I miss that?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I really, really am passionate about music education and performing arts education, because it takes all of those experiences and gives them labels, it gives them structure, it gives them communication, gives them definition, and then you can navigate all of that so much easier. And that's why I'm so excited. Like where I'm from, the UAE is now like the access to all of that is so much more than when I was trying to make it in the industry, which I'm so happy about. Gonna change everything, which I'm so excited about.
So what was your experience like at the festival? So this is the Al Burda podcast. What was your experience like at the festival that took place in December of last year?
Listen, it was wild. Okay, so I believe in manifestation. Okay, so I sat there literally going like, you know what? I've lived in the US for almost 3 years now. I have really, really got the musical theater style, the pop Western style, the jazz, soul, R&B. And I was like, I still to this day cannot really perform in a sense of my upbringing when it comes to heritage and culture.
Yeah.
That means Eastern style of music. I don't necessarily mean, before I used to attribute it to just singing in the language Arabic.
Yeah.
But now attributed to the kind of the scales and the style and the whole ambiance of things. So I sat there going like, you know what? I think it's time. I want to explore that. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know how, but I want to explore that. Fast forward like a few weeks or so.
Really?
I swear to God, it was it was very bizarre. I met up with a friend who I've worked with years ago called Saif Fadl, who's a wonderful producer, singer, songwriter. And we worked on this project together. And I was just like, Saif, it's kind of bizarre. Like, I forgot that I worked with you a few years ago. And he's like, yeah, totally forgot. I really wonder where this is going to go. And then I get approached by a Burda Festival telling us, hey, we want you to perform a piece for the festival. And I was like, there we go. That's the moment I've been asking for. This is clear as day. And I love that the not only did the opportunity to perform in that style came across, it actually, the tools were already provided. And by that, I mean, I feel zero level of strong comfort when it comes to performing in that realm.
Yeah.
Fadl, which was so wonderful, was that bridge, the bridge that I specifically needed between the Western side and the Eastern side. And he is in that space where he can hear both and kind of like hold my hand and kind of like tell me where to go. And and what I love is he creates a safe space. And then we kind of made a pun out of it because it's like safe space, which is so perfect. And I was telling him about how in my studies, I learned in acting about how to create a safe space, because if you want to bring an artist to his full potential, is you got to make them feel safe to be vulnerable and try whatever needs to be done. So at one point I was like, I put my demands as an artist. I was like, I cannot do this without Saif. If Saif is not in this, I will not be able to participate. Luckily, it all worked out. And I kind of set aside the notion of trying to make it be a certain way, kind of just surrender to Saif and his expertise. So I just waited. I waited to know what the next step would be. And kind of like, should I brush up on my harmonic scales, my maqamat? Should I do like a basic YouTube search? Should I try to understand what that means? And luckily I did. I did some simple. So like whenever he would drop some words, I would be able to understand what they were. And went to that studio and we sat there for like 5 hours and just like going through the music and singing it. And I remember having genuinely one of the most fulfilling creative experiences. It's like reminding me, this is what I want. This is what I expect a space to feel like, what a creative process should, like how I want it to feel like and look like. And then basically I sang a song about the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and it kind of like this, in a way that if you hear it, you'd still hear me in it, hearing my kind of isms and styles, and kind of still anchoring in a Western style, but with deep influences that are brought by Saif Fadl, which was pretty wonderful.
Yeah. How do you feel like your education in the States, which I think, if I understand correctly, was at Berkeley, how did it apply to this, to your, to this type of experience?
So yeah, I went to the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley, which is like a part of their umbrella of music. I think one of like the founding teachings that I've kind of instilled not only in my performance world but generally in how I deal with life, which is kind of being in my body. And what does that mean? It's kind of to at least be, the minimum is just to be curious about what's happening inside of my body. And that would look like, if I'm feeling nervous, is to notice that I have labeled a series of chemicals happening in my body, and I've given them the one single label of nervous. And then I just carry that as being anxious and scared and not wanting to do it and fear and all of that. So just the simple act of like a small exercise of finding your feet and deepening your breath and sitting still and sending your awareness to specific parts of your body, and try to take the labels away, but just sit in the experiences of them, navigating that becomes much easier. So when I heard that I was going to perform in Eastern style, well, first of all, I was just like, well, the lyrics are much more complicated than what I'm used to. So do I put a stand on stage where I have the lyrics in front of me? Do I memorize it to my heart? It's like, cannot do it anymore. And that's a big deal, because when it comes to performance day, feeling confident with the lyrics is at least for me, it's a big part. I know a lot of musicians tend to put the music sheet in front of them. I was like, I really want to feel comfortable without it. But catching the reaction from the beginning, catching the nervous aspect that struck up before I let it snowball into this whole thing of nerves, I can take it one chunk at a time and then kind of surrender to it. So what I did was actually, I specifically to the lyrics, because I'm not very familiar with singing in Arabic. And I speak it fluently, but I never actually sang it. I don't usually sing it, and not in this type of dialect. So it was a big thing for me. So I decided that.
Do you happen to remember them? Can I put you on the spot? Do you happen to remember them?
Oh yeah, I remember the whole thing.
Would you mind?
صلوات ربي والسلام أرواحنا مشتاقة تشدو على باب المدينة. I was like, I never would just casually speak in this framework. So for me, it was very new, and I just wanted to feel comfortable in it. So I sat there from like 3 weeks before the event. Almost every other day, I would either write the lyrics down by hand, because I know memorizing through writing helps. I would speak the lyrics and not sing them. So I want to feel comfortable being able to speak them, and that will make the singing much easier. I would at least listen to it like once before bed, because for me, I understand that if I sleep on something, I wake up remembering it much better. So as I have those days, I try to implement that. And in that way, I mitigated and I lessened the anxiety towards that. And then there's a point where I surrender to it, where I go like, did I do the work that was asked of me? Yes. Did I do what I think was necessary enough? Yes. Did I do my best? Yes. And anything after that is not up to me to kind of decide how it goes. I did all I can do. So I have a very difficult time doing al-urab, which is kind of like a vibrato, but in a very Eastern style. And I was so nervous about that, because doing that in the studio is one thing, doing it by yourself is one thing, doing it in the shower is one thing, and doing it on stage is a whole nother thing. So it's going through the same process of being in my body, notice what I'm anxious about, accept it, try to navigate through it. And then, so yeah, Burda was like a whole new beast for me to tackle in terms of comfort zone. And I love that. And I remember speaking to Her Excellency Nur al-Kabia, and she was like, how did that feel? And I was like, I'm very nervous, but I can tell it's the good kind of nervous. It's the one that you're like, I'm way out of my depth, but in the best way possible, because it means that worst case scenario, I can swim back, but I am out there. I'm doing something new. One of the performers, Jahda Wahbi,
yeah,
an incredible performer. And she came up to me and she's like, I want to produce a song for you. And I was just floored to go like, so that means I passed some sort of some sort of test, some sort of level. She's like, but we got to work on your maqam. And I was like, girl, I'm with you on that. Like, she's like, I can teach you and I can help you. And I was just like, wow, here I am standing in front of one of the top performers when it comes to this style. And they're offering to kind of offer like for me to join them as a student. And that means the work that I've done paid off. That means I've done what I needed to do. My homework was checked.
Do you feel like you were really opening a door internally for yourself, reintroducing yourself, or maybe introducing yourself to for the first time to an entire like corpus of music?
100%. I can't really say if it's supposed to mean that I have to do something about it, in the sense that now do I have to continuously work with this style of music? Not necessarily, but then again, I'm very open. I'm much more open to this realm and this world where I haven't been in the past. And I think just because it was one small step that I felt safe about, I was like, okay, if the opportunity comes my way, I'll definitely move on with further steps. I actually worked on I can't say the name of the movie, but we worked on a movie and I made a song for that. And that's also very Eastern style. And I was like, wow, this is really like this door that I never thought would be there. It's now there. And I can't ever really pinpoint where it's going to go, but it's just exciting being part of the experience.
What do you think? I'm always interested in like the many publics that a performer is engaging with, and I would imagine that the sort of the public on your social media would be very surprised by this,
yes,
and would sort of be maybe even confused by it. Is that something that you're concerned with?
Yeah, very good question. I actually had friends who told me not to share what I did, because it was just so out of the realm of what people are used to in terms of subject matter, in terms of style, in terms of kind of like what it might represent as me as a whole. And I have to say, I'm still in that seat of going like, what does it really mean to perform something so different? Because performing arts, one of the wonderful things about them is that they speak much more than what usually audiences think they do. So when people watch a musical and they think, oh, I'm just watching a play with fun music, there are so many different layers and connotations and social structures that go into that play that subliminally affect how you view the world.
And the reverse is also true, where the meaning that the performers intend may not actually be, the ball may not land where the performers think it's going to land.
Right, definitely. And I think it's a good place to be in terms of balance, is to kind of strategize to a certain degree, but then reach a point where to go like where you cannot fixate on all these, you can't pinpoint all these details.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have to let go some of it. Like let go the possibility of how this will be received or where it might go. Because if it turn out to be the best, it can go the other way. But I think every opportunity is a step forward. In terms of how I feel about it, I feel proud of what I've done. I feel like I genuinely enjoy the work that I did. I think I feel a sense of pride in the journey that it took to get to what I did. And if anything, if I post that and the proclamation is more going to be about that, the journey that it took to do. And then what could be inferred about how people who are very familiar with a specific style that I took, that's kind of out of my control, I guess.
I think there's something powerful about the idea of you posting it. And let me make the case, because there are so many people who upload B-, C- covers of Doja Cat and Billie Eilish and Frank Sinatra. I include myself in this category, right? In my case, it's more of a D-, but there are so many people who are trying and only to a minor degree succeeding. But nevertheless, they are venturing into this whole new ocean of sounds and trying to express themselves by covering this music, right? However, I feel like in such a sacred, quite literally sacred art form, there aren't that many people who say, hey, listen, I may not be an expert at this. I may not be the best, but this is meaningful. It moves something in me. And so I'm going to upload this. I'm going to be a B-. I'm going to be a B+. And inshallah, one day I'm an A-. Inshallah, I'm an A+ at some point. Now I'm a B-.
Yeah.
You know, and allowing more and more performers and artists to try to bridge that gap, to try to say, I don't know this music as well as I want to, but I got to tiptoe in that direction.
Yeah, totally. And I love kind of like this sense of kind of level of transparency when it comes to social media and when posting. And it's to kind of proclaim that within this post, I'm not trying to make a certain agenda move forward. It's just if like you can be as honest and just explain where you are in that path. And sharing that is actually very powerful. I very much agree with you because it reinforces the idea that it's really not about the product, it's about the process. And the process can take you to an infinite amount of ways. You know what? I have made my decision. I will be posting that.
Good job.
Thank you, Mikey.
Yeah, no, good job. The other reason why I think it's important is that performers, I believe, are in a dangerous game. And very effective performers are playing a dangerous game because it is, if you're an incredible performer, you can lose yourself in that performance. And with that loss is a loss of authenticity. What is nice about transparency is that it reveals who you actually are. And in a weird way, I think it actually allows you to be more transformative and more sort of chameleon-esque in your performances because it gives you something to hold on to. Say, no, don't forget who I actually am. This is who I actually am.
Right.
And it gives also the viewers something to hold on to because they're like, oh no, I know who he actually is. He's playing Macbeth. This is not who he actually is.
Right.
You know. But if you're a sort of this Daniel Day-Lewis type character, you're like, I don't even know who you actually are.
And I guess that's something you learn to play with the more experience you get.
Sure.
Because I can tell how hard on myself about it. I'm like, I don't know what this is going to mean. I don't know where this is going to go. Is it going to change the trajectory of the project that I'm going to start receiving? And are people going to think of me differently now? Has the box that I'm trying to leave for so long, am I put back into it now? Which is are actual thoughts that go through my head. But I definitely agree with you. I'm a firm believer of starting small and taking small steps. I was never one to jump off of the cliff. I am just like tiptoe your way through the whole thing, as long as you're moving somewhere.
Yeah.
And if that does change in a way that I don't necessarily believe in or like want it to, that's also part of the experience. It's to kind of like, okay, how do I navigate this now? Navigating a result that I didn't expect, navigating a result that I didn't necessarily want, which I have done in the past. And it's kind of like, well, now you have the tools to do it even better now.
So I'm curious what it was like. You know, all of us have been living on Zoom and living in our living rooms for the last 2 years. What was it like being at the actual festival and being surrounded by artists and cultural practitioners and performers from all over the region, all over the world, but folks who are really sort of trying to explore what the quote unquote Islamic world is and was. So there are a lot of people at the festival from all over the place. What was it like being there?
For me, I go through the steps of, first of all, I'm very grateful that as a performer, I get to work. I haven't worked during during COVID season for like a year and a half. And I was really relying on things picking back up again. And luckily through that time, there was a whole different experimentation when it comes to how can the medium of performing arts transfer into the digital world, with lots of successful ways of doing that. I've been able to be a part of an online musical. I was able to do part of doing readings, but being there physically in that space is always going to be a different experience. I tend to refrain from saying this medium is better than that medium. I think they all deliver something of value. There's something different when all your senses are present in a space, when you can I did not expect the conversation to go here, but this is why the kind of the metaverse is exciting, because it's like, how can you bring all of those senses into, and that's going to affect performing arts to a whole different degree. But yeah, so sitting in that space to use your eyes to see the performer and the lighting design, and to have your ears to actually sense the physical vibrations coming through, and your body actually sensing the vibrations coming from the speakers, and being in that space to share into an applause is such a visceral experience. I've actually been to a Broadway show last week, and I forgot what it feels like to have the echo and the sensation of the applause happening. So physically, it was very exciting to know that we can go back, knowing that we can feel safe during the pandemic, and to be able to do what we love and to share that and to meet other artists and to talk about what it means to be an artist physically in person and to share in that moment and to have kind of these natural incidents of we were backstage and then you bump into someone and you're like, hey, oh my God, I just saw you on stage. Fantastic work. And they're like, oh my God, you too. And then you just dive into a conversation. Those are moments that are less curated than what digital world would kind of offer you, which I really love.
There's something special about being in a room with 1,000 people all looking in the exact same direction and sitting, breathing silently.
It's really, honestly, for me, it's religious. It very much is representative of what a sacred, what something sacred would look like. Yeah.
I want to end just asking you what you're working on right now and what the listeners should be excited about in terms of what you got coming up.
Yeah. So I'm currently working with a producer into releasing a small short EP. And then I am going remote for a while where I hopefully will write my first album. I am constantly in the audition game. So you can literally hopefully see me somewhere on your screens on TV or a network platform sometime soon. But those details are still up in the air. So it's going strong with my acting career, going strong with my music career, and hopefully along the side, some workshops and teaching opportunities, math classes. So
where are you based right now? Where are you speaking to me from?
I am currently in Boston, Massachusetts, United States. Travel back and forth between Dubai and Boston and keeping my foot in both spaces at the current moment. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Rashed, thanks so much for making the time to talk. It was a pleasure to be able to learn more about your career and more about your process. And I'm excited to get my hands on that album.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Dan. Thank you. I appreciate the thoughtful questions because it really makes a whole interview very different. So I appreciate that.
Sure. So if you're listening right now, go to burda.ae and you can learn more about the festival. There are a bunch of videos up there of the previous performances and talks. So I highly encourage you to check that out. And we'll have another podcast coming up soon. Thank you so much for listening. I hope to see you at the festival. For more information, go to burda.ae. That is burda.ae. The festival runs from December 19th to the 21st at the Dubai Exhibition Center as part of Expo 2020 Dubai. The festival is organized by the Ministry of Culture and Youth, UAE, and this podcast is powered by Afikra Podcasts. Take care.